Oh, there we go. Good evening, everyone. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. Now I hand the meeting over to Jerry.
Good evening, everyone. We'll start this month's meeting with the introductions. To my right,
Elizabeth Dienklauer, Vice Chair of the Commission.
Ducia Lebowska, Advisory Board Member.
Wesley Ireland, Commission Member.
Olivia Richard, member. I live in Brighton.
Carl Richardson, Commission Member. I live in Brighton Center.
Juan Carlos Ramirez, Commission Member from the South End.
Paul Karen, Advisory Board Commission Member.
Hi, Kristen McCosh, Disability Commissioner and ADA Title II Coordinator for the City of Boston.
and I'm Jerry Boyd. I'm the chair of the advisory board, and I'm from West Roxbury. And on the phone,
Kyle Robidoux, board member, and I live in Lower Roxbury.
and next on the agenda will be the approval of the March minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve? I make a motion. Any seconds? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Next, do we have any announcements from the floor? And I'll start with Elizabeth, if you have any.
Not specifically, other than things I think that will be addressed.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other announcements from board members? Or on the phone, Kyle? Any announcements?
No, no announcements.
Okay, moving right along. We have Will Morales from Boston Center for Youth and Families.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
I want to thank you for inviting BCYF, myself, and a member of my team. We had another individual actually was going to be here with us, who is Jill LaMonica, who's doing some fabulous inclusionary work at our BCYF Center at the Leahy Halloran in Dorchester. That's kind of serving as sort of a pilot site about how we can do this we can do inclusionary work in the community base, working with parents and also with community partners to make sure that our facilities are that are welcoming for all, but most importantly, that the programming is also for all together. To give you a little background about BCYF, BCYF started back in 1972, and it actually was a community-led process in where community residents saw that many of the community schools at the end of the day will close for the day. And that was once upon a time ago. If you remember, the end of the school day was the end of the school day. Today, a lot of schools are bombarded with a lot of different programmings. But back then, they saw that this was an asset that was going unused and that it needed to be kind of opened up for the community, for community usage. And so out of that idea, community centers was kind of created to hopefully meet the needs of the communities at that time. Fast forward, today we are Boston Centers of Youth and Families. We have the privilege of being one of the only centers nationwide among other cities that don't have this kind of structure, this human service structure. And that's a very rare but very treasured opportunity for the city to have such a thing. About 3 years ago, the mayor of Boston appointed me to be the commissioner of Boston Centers of Youth and Families. And during my look and listen and learn tour, I was speaking to a lot of the administrative coordinators who actually run our facilities. We have a network of about 36 facilities. And they kept talking about, about the challenges of working with children who have, of course, physical disabilities and some that have cognitive disabilities, and talking about the need to look at training, to look at opportunities, and to look at partnerships. And during that time, a little about over a year and a half ago, we began to create committees that began to kind of reflect a little bit about what I heard, especially committees that looked at operations, committees that looked at programs, and committees that also looked at staff development areas. And out of that work, one of the things that we wanted to focus is to look at how do our facilities become more inclusive. You know, what is it that we need to do to make sure not only are we addressing accessibility, but that at the same time that we are creating the bridges between the disabled and able to actually function within a space and to be doing programming together and not creating sort of a separate kind of environment for those kind of programs. And a lot of that work was led by one of my administrative coordinators, Jill LaMonica, who's worked with the Butler Foundation and countless other partners and kind of doing that work. And at the same time, when I came on board, the mayor was very generous of providing additional resources, capital improvements to our facilities. And one of the things that's always continues to be on a hindsight, and the one thing that we have to thank Commissioner Kristen McCosh, is as we're designing buildings, we are making sure we're designing those buildings to make sure that everyone, regardless of their ability, has full access. And so it's been great that when we're thinking in the design process, that we're thinking, you know, how does someone get into our pools? How does someone get through our doors? You know, what else can we be doing? We could look at the curbs outside of our buildings, and a lot of improvements have been happening. And it's what we continue to hopefully do, especially since we have a couple of major capital projects that are going to be coming up in the near future. One being, which I'm excited about, is the Curley Community Center, which is located in South Boston, which has access to a beach that I think are going to present some wonderful opportunities to look at that piece of development when we go there. So we're going to continue to hopefully do that. As we continue to review our programming, we always are looking for the opportunities and where we can continue to enhance those programs and make them stronger. Currently, programs that BCYF has run traditionally, and I'm probably going to have Roberta Smalls talk about it, is that we have a very famous program named Camp Joy, which started in 1946 and was catered to be a program specifically designed to work with children and families with disabilities. And so Camp Joy, you know, since 1946 has been running out of, prior to it becoming a BCYF department, has been there gloriously doing that. So I'm going to let Roberta share a little bit about that program, the history, and what they do.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. Camp Joy, as the commissioner stated, has been in effect since 1946. We currently have 3 sites. We provide services for youth and young adults from ages 3 to 22 with disabilities. We provide services for their siblings as well. It's totally recreational. We do a lot of arts and crafts and small and large group activities. We also have the opportunity to go on field trips, and we provide door-to-door transportation for all of our participants, and it's very, very affordable. We have several partners, Boston Medical Center, Children's Hospital, that provides scholarships and pay for them to attend Camp Joy. So it's been a pleasure. We've also had the opportunity to employ several of the participants to be Camp Joy counselors as well, which has been amazing. And that's part of our mission, is to also provide the opportunity for young adults to be able to be camp counselors. And it's been a marvelous experience for me. I've worked with Camp Joy approximately 15 years, and it's been one of the highlights of my career with the City of Boston. So I did bring a couple of applications. We're still accepting applications for Camp Joy. And we have a number of participants that come year after year. We have a program in the winter as well, as a respite program for parents. It meets on Saturdays. It gives them the opportunity to be able to go shopping or get some of their errands run and have their children in a space where they're having fun, They go swimming, we go on field trips, they are able to play in the gymnasium, and we have activities planned for them. And it's their program, so they get to plan the field trips that they'd like to go on. They get to really make decisions about what they want to do on their Saturdays. So if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. And if you know of anyone you'd like to refer to Camp Joy, we are currently accepting applications. And we are in West Roxbury, Brighton, and Roxbury at this time. Thank you.
Yep. So Joy gave, so that's a quick brief on that piece. But as BCYF moves forward, one of the things that we're going to be launching this year is definitely a strategic plan. And one of the things, hopefully, in the strategic plan is that we're actually going to talk to a lot of our partners who we've worked with, who has worked with this population, to kind of think about what could be more. You know, where are we now in working with children with disabilities, but, you know, where can we be, and then how we're going to get there is going to be really key. So, you know, I'm going to definitely lean, especially to Kristen, to kind of help in that conversation and hopefully pull you guys into as well to kind of think about that. But in the time that I've been here, the good thing that that committee has done is that we're even revisiting our own mission statement. And does our language speak to that population? You know what I mean? Does that mission statement also is really motivating us to kind of think about that more broadly and think about that population more broadly and think about what else that we should be doing more of? And, you know, and I'm glad that in the time that I've been here, one of the first things that's happened, if you know, there is a Mayor's Youth Council. Mayor's Youth Council has existed forever. A little over a year ago, when the Department of Youth Engagement and Employment was under my watch, today they've been elevated to their own department. We had one candidate, a young man who I believe was from the, might have been from the Horace Mann School, who had applied to become a Mayor's Youth Council candidate and to be on the Mayor's Youth Council. He had a hearing impairment, and there was but at the same time, he blew us away on how he responded to a lot of the interview questions. And then the whole idea about the cost of an interpreter. We didn't say no to the cost of the interpreter. He has as just much right to be a part of that council, to help shape the city, to kind of hopefully talk a little bit about what else is needed, and to be really a powerful force and to be a voice to make a difference. And I'm glad that under our watch, we were able to make that very possible for him to kind of do and be a part of it. Like I said, as we move forward, we're definitely going to keep inclusionary as one of the big areas that we want to hopefully promote, because the reality is I understand the family who struggles with that. I myself was labeled a behavioral challenged young man when I was a boy. And I can remember times where my mother was trying to find programming for me, and individuals kept telling her that we can't serve your child, we don't have the capacity. And that only left me with one option. You know, instead of putting me in the loving and caring arms of a strong mentor, I was found on a street corner with someone who had ill intentions to mentor me. And unfortunately, I fell through the cracks. Today, I'm an adult who is the adult who's a single child to a mother who struggles with mental health. And I provide for her care day in and day out. And it's pretty tough. But at the same time, you know, I understand the struggles that sometimes families have to face, because I'm seeing it even within my own household. And what I hope to do with BCYF, and especially I know that what the mayor wishes to see, is to make sure that all our centers become centers for all. So if you have any questions, please, I'll turn the floor over to you. I did not know how much time I had, so I just didn't want to be really short and brief and make sure that I'm not taking you away from other bigger agenda items.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being here, Will, and for presenting to us. And I want to, you know, personally thank you and your staff. Myself and another advisory board member are members of a power wheelchair soccer team that practices at the Tobin, and your staff there have been really, really helpful to us in the 7 years since we've been a team, you know, providing us with court time, and also very recently providing us space in the building to house our equipment. So we really thank you for that. So I know firsthand that you're trying to be more inclusive, and I really appreciate appreciate that. Do we have any questions from any members of the commission? Wesley?
I do have a question. I'm thinking of last year, the Boston School Committee had talked about having a presentation on children with disabilities and the ADA to show to the school committee. Are you familiar with that presentation?
No, I'm not. I wasn't.
And that data that was presented?
No, not.
Okay.
I mean, I'm aware
I think that it was at a school committee meeting that happened maybe last week, actually. And I think that video is available on YouTube.
Yep.
It would be great to be able to show it to kids with disabilities in the city. I would really suggest that you look at that data, and it might influence your plan for the future to make sure that you have a more inclusive centers.
Sure, and that'd be great. But I am very much aware that there are over 10,000 students in the Boston Public Schools who have IEPs, and about 75% of those children have disabilities that are kind of hidden. So we know that there's a framework to it. Sometimes I think what we're trying to do is that we're also located in 22 school buildings, so we also see that there are opportunities there on how we work with the schools better around inclusionary practices. But they've had a lot of transition in the last year, as you may be aware. And I'm so ecstatic that now they have finally 3 soups up for the jobs, and let's see who they may pick, because it's going to be really contingent upon the leadership at that level working with me, working with our chief Martinez to really look at this holistically and not just sort of one-sided and who gets invited to what forums or what conferences or presentations. But but we are committed to do what we have with the resources we have, with the intentionality that inclusionary is going to be something that we're no longer trying, something that we're doing.
Any other questions from the commission members? Paul?
Yeah, Will, I think you and your staff are doing a great job, and I'm just curious if you're seeing an increase in youth with mental disabilities over the years, and do you have the resources to provide for the youth with mental disabilities that oftentimes we don't see?
Yeah, I don't have that data, but I knew that when I was doing my look, listen, and learn tours, those are the things that continue to surface. And one thing we're hoping to do is when we go through the strategic planning is how do we become a data-driven organization so that we're able to capture everything that we really are dealing with within our doors. But I don't have the data off the top of my head. But I know that when I was actually having the observation and the conversations, that continued to be one of the biggest things. And especially nowadays when you work in communities that you have children that are dealing with trauma. You know what I mean? Trauma begins to create a whole host of triggers that tend to happen, and we're looking at how's that linked, because we know that's a real mental health dilemma, and how do we kind of connect those young people to make sure that we have the services that we can provide in the capacities we can within our buildings, but who are the partners that can really provide the clinical kind of support as well to balance it out.
Thank you.
And in Camp Joy, we at each site we have a registered nurse.
Roberta, so sorry. Can I just ask you to speak in the microphone just for the cameras?
At Camp Joy, we do have a registered nurse at each site, and we have a number of children that are on medication and antipsychotic medications that they may have to take. And we meet with the families, we meet with the clinicians often to see how we can provide services that would be beneficial for the participant in our program, and it has worked wonderfully. It has to be a partnership. It has to be, we work with their therapists, we work with the families and our nurses involved so that we can provide services for the children that come through our doors. We also request that parents provide us with IEPs, but there are a number of our students or our participants that have not been evaluated, that the parents are hesitant, but we still accept them because they have come to us because they've not been successful at other camps, and sometimes that's the first that's the first time they acknowledge that there may be something going on and that maybe they need a camp that has a smaller ratio with more attention for their children. And then we can have conversation on how they may need to be evaluated and how we can assist in that process. So we try to be inclusive, we try to be open. And it's my goal to accept everyone that comes to our doors if we can provide quality services for them. We do provide door-to-door transportation so that parents don't have to worry about how to get them there. And we ensure that when we plan field trips, that where we take them is accessible, that they're comfortable where we're going, and that it's a place they can have a great time and be who they are and not worry about what's going on around them.
Thank you.
I think he had a question.
You have a question, Commissioner?
I had a question. Oh, Kyle, you go.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I think
Sure, this is Kyle, and it's hard to hear Will and the other co-presenter just due to the system, so I apologize if this was already mentioned, but there's two questions. One, does BCYF have a dedicated kind of adaptive sports coordinator or director? And then the second piece is, I understand, that BCYF focuses on out-of-school time, but can you talk at all about any kind of collaboration or co-outreach efforts that happen between BCYF and BPS to help identify students with different abilities that may be interested in participating in BCYF activities?
Kyle, I'm just going to repeat that because since you're on the phone, you cannot see that a lot of people are squinting, trying to hear really well. And since I'm right next to the phone, I'm going to repeat it. So Kyle had two questions. One, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle. One being, does BCYF have some sort of adaptive sports coordinator or adaptive sports director, some sort of point person related to adaptive sports? Mm-hmm. And then the second question was, Kyle knows that you focus on predominantly after-school activities, but he's hoping that you can touch upon any of the partnerships that you guys have with BPS to actually identify those students with disabilities. Is that true, Kyle? Was that the second question?
Yeah, are there any shared outreach efforts?
Great.
Yeah.
Shared outreach efforts or things like that to kind of include students with disabilities from BPS into the BCYF programs.
Yep. In regards to a specific adaptive sports person coordinator, no, we don't. Under Jill LaMonica's kind of watch, there have been a couple of staff who have been trained to look at what are the partnership opportunities and what kind of programs.
Speak a little bit closer into the mic.
Okay. Under the adaptive sports coordinator, no, we don't. I mean, we're hoping that as we continue to evolve, it'd be something that we can actually push through the budget, hopefully. And but under Jill LaMonica's work, there has been opportunities with the Butler Foundation to look at training opportunities to train our staff to think very differently about looking at a basketball gym and not just seeing it being catering to an able-bodied population, but to think about how does it caters to all different populations. And so, and that's how, Derry, you benefit from that kind of thinking and having that mindset. It's an area that we can get better at, and it's an area that hopefully we want to work to get to. In regards to BPS and BCYF, there are conversations that tend to happen back and forth. We are in 22 school buildings, no child is going to be turned away regardless of their ability. So there are opportunities that we do have conversations with school administration and BCYF site administrations to make those things possible for all the children who attend that school, because most of the time, they want an after-school opportunity. They want to be able to continue socializing, and it's not in books, but it's actually in opportunities for STEM education. It's opportunities to be a part of a music program or whatever it might be. But one of the things that we are really committed in working with BPS is to continue to evolve a little bit more to understand what are they doing in the classroom and what kind of really learned life experiences we can operate in our after-school programs. So I think that we have healthy dialogues there that happen with BPS organically, but I think we're going to continue to form them Just like anybody else, we're actually going through an MOU process with Boston Public Schools to kind of look at dedicated space, looking at dedicated looking at different programming initiatives, and what is it that we can do together that we hope is going to hopefully help not only answer questions around inclusionary, but of everything else that we should be doing better together. They have 57,000 students in their school system. We see anywhere annually about 60,000 students that come through our programming in a year, so we know we capture their students on a day in and day out basis.
And Commissioner, I know you had
Okay.
questions.
Thank you, Will, for coming tonight. I know that inclusion and accessibility are two of your big priorities. When Will was first appointed by Mayor Walsh 3 years ago,
Yeah.
I was probably one of the first people he approached just to talk about these issues. And I know that many of the sites are accessible, including a new one, is it in East Boston? It was
East
just
Boston,
renovated.
Paris Street was done completely over. I'm super psyched that the pool's going to get done over, so it's going to be interesting seeing that. We've recently had Vine Street done over. That there were some ramp issues around with that one, and we took care of it. And I thank you, Kristen, because the reality is that when I go to the buildings, the first thing I do is, instead of taking the front stairs, I go up the ramps. And so I look for the cracks.
Great.
I look for anything that might be wrong, anything that's not working right, and then hopefully put it back in our facilities to kind of address, because it's just something that you may be more mindful about. And so I thank you for that and your team for that.
Yeah, so I just had two quick questions.
Yep.
Is part of your strategic plan going to assess the buildings for emergency shelters? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I knew we are, just to inform you, we are also, mostly majority of our standalones are set up as emergency shelters, as you're aware.
So not the schools?
Well, the schools present a different dynamic, because the reality is that at least the standalones can be shut down independently if there's an emergency. For example, if the East Boston fire would have meant that those people might have needed 2 nights or 3 nights there, we can shut down the program operation to provide those families with care for a couple of days, should all of a sudden the Red Cross can't keep up with the numbers of where they go. Normally our school buildings still have to be open the next day for school. And, so you can't tell the children stay home while we're addressing that piece of it. But at least our standalones are always continually assessed to kind of look at how do we improve even our shelter care. There's over 400 employees in BCYF. Each of them go through a shelter care management kind of program. And part of that program also works with, if you have individuals that are coming in with disabilities, and so forth, is an aspect of it. So, but that's the kind of assessment. I mean, they can do.
So I'd love to stay involved with the
Yeah.
master plan as you move forward.
Yep.
And then really quickly, you had mentioned to us a few months ago about some open times you have in some of the sites, and maybe looking at some programming for people with disabilities.
Yeah, anytime. If
Okay.
there's any opportunities to partner, individuals want to be able to get access, if we definitely have the open times, and we can always assess, we can always find out where are the open times and see what leagues or what individuals or, organizations that could benefit from it, we'll be more than welcome to make it available.
Okay, so if board members know of any other groups that are
Yeah.
potentially looking for space, we can try to plug them into some of the open times of the BCYF.
Yeah. And let them know they'll
facilities.
meet with me directly, so it won't be passed off. If they'll actually will hopefully meet with me directly. I mean, the one thing that the mayor envisions that our centers be the centers of partnership. So, when it comes to that, I tend to want to sit in the table and be a part of those conversations too as well.
Thank
So
you.
it's clarity.
Elizabeth, I know you had a question.
Thank you for your presentations.
Thank you.
One, I would second where I think Kyle was going with his inquiry about having a director or someone in charge of adaptive sports, that even if that isn't able to be a full-time position that's readily available, that is a recognizable expertise, and given the array of different kinds of, for different disabilities, the different adaptations that are available. I don't know if you already have, do you already have, given the number of different graduate programs in the Boston area, do you already have graduate students involved in the work that you do? What I had in mind by analogy is down at the Quincy YMCA, they have a dedicated program for wheelchair users involving the use of electrodes in using some of the specialized stationary bikes, that kind of thing. And they have physical therapy students who are still in training who I believe are getting course credit for internship credit for their time there rather than perhaps compensation per se, but one way or another, they're getting that direct experience of working with people while they're still under supervision, but while they're still students. And I wondered if you already have tapped into that element of, as far as people who are helping oversee or chaperone or whatever the terminology is, help more people, especially thinking of students with different kinds of disabilities, help them participate.
Yeah, do you have any college partnerships that you?
We have a number of college students. Oh, sorry. We have a number of college students and graduate students that work at Camp Joy during the summer. We've had a few that have volunteered, but primarily they work because they're looking for the experience. And we've had, they've been physical therapists, they've been into physical activities as well as recreational and art therapy, the art therapy. So we do have a partnership with several of the colleges, but they usually come as employees. They want that experience for the summer. But that's a wonderful idea. That's something we will explore.
But it's something worth exploring. I mean, one of my past hats is that I worked at Wheelock College, so I connected students back into CBOs and some community projects so that they can work on their practicums. So I think it's worth exploring it. And you mentioned Quincy, and you mentioned the Y. You know, my history was 14 years with the Y. And one of the prouding moments that I had was I was able to work on a little bit on the capital campaign of the O Square YMCA. And it was one that was actually going to be one that looked at the gym being inclusive, looking at the pool being very accessible and so forth. And so that's great. When it comes to adaptive stuff, I worked in the snow sports industry for about a good 6 years, one with Youth Enrichment Services. And one of the things that I did was partner with Loon Mountain and New England Disabled Sports. And we took a lot of kids of very different disabilities and gave them a day of winter sports. And boy, did they have fun. And so, so I do appreciate it, and it's great that it was surfaced here because I wasn't even. I'm really anxious to really get the strategic planning process going because I think that would help inform how we can do this work best. You know what I mean? In the best capacity that we can. But hopefully we can also surface what are the right partnerships, what colleges, what organizations, and what hospitals do we need to be the sort of the right formula. Because the reality is that the only way this work can be done at its best capacity is when we can do it together. And it can't be one organization that does it alone.
Just a quick follow-up question. So you have, you provide for, say, the college or grad students, you provide the funding for them for the summer? Yeah, good.
Yeah, the mayor is generous every year to provide opportunities to provide in the budget the funds that we need to hire college students during the summer months. And you know, and this is, you know, these are students who I think in the long term are going to be in the field working with this population. You know, this is not a job that you just give a kid out of high school. It's somebody who's really committed, and in good chances I've seen and I've met a couple. Some have a sibling or a mother, or you know, so to them their passion is being lined up with their purpose, but they get the benefit of getting a paycheck, and you know, and it's a win-win for all. So.
Oh well, that's all the better. The reason I said court's credit is sometimes if things are happening during the academic year, it winds up being in lieu of tuition in that sense, but paying is all the better. And some schools do have stipends if there are, but if the budget adequately covers it, then that's great that you're plugged in. And I just continue to encourage if there are additional groups, or I know Spalding Rehab has their adaptive program. I don't know if they've tied in as well.
They are.
Great, thank you.
Olivia?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Just wanted to mention you guys house the wheelchair basketball in Charlestown.
Okay,
I know that because I play.
Thank you.
And your people have always been awesome to us.
All right, thank you. We appreciate that.
Great. I just had one additional question myself. It's Jerry. So you've mentioned, and we've mentioned here, the possible need to have either somebody specifically identified or you possibly hire eventually a recreation therapist. You said, I think you mentioned, Will, that there currently isn't funding in the budget for that. I would hope that, you know, your strategic plan going forward, that we can put that in there, because I really think that would help a lot of this work, is if you hired a dedicated person, such as they have in Springfield, such as they have in Brookline and some of the surrounding communities. I think it would really help. So if there's any way that we can support that, please, you know, let us know. So
Thank you. Thank you. I will.
And I know that we had one member of the public interested to ask a question. If you could just make your way to the microphone and identify yourself, please.
Okay. Both Juan Carlos and Jerry know me. I help coach and manage the Boston Breakers. First and foremost,
And your name?
big thank you to Boston Self-Help Center, who sponsors the Breakers, but more importantly, John Jackson at Boston Youth and Families at the Tobin Center. Just amazing support for the program for the past 7 years. It really has been outstanding, so thank you for that. I guess, first off, I have to apologize. I'm deaf as a post, and this was designed by my enemies. I heard very little of what was happening, so I'm probably going to repeat what was said by other people, and for that I'm sorry. You have a point person for adaptive sports, and who is it? That was one of my questions, and I don't know if that's been answered. Secondly, in terms of moving forward, we have a number of interested parties in looking at adaptive sports and recreation, and we know who they are, but Boston Self-Help Center and the Breakers are a very small, relatively poor nonprofit organization. So going forward, it would be wonderful to get Boston Youth and Families to help, get your commission to help, and maybe looking at a needs assessment, for one, going forward, what are the needs in terms of adaptive sports? And then secondly, trying to implement that on a citywide level would be wonderful, because it's a need. It's a need that we don't know enough about, and we need to explore. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and the Boston Breakers and Boston Self-Help Center would very much like to participate going forward. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Want me to answer?
Make any comment.
Okay, good, sure.
Close enough so I can hear.
Come close to me.
Okay.
So around the adaptive contact, no. But the good thing is that committee that looked at inclusionary, John Jackson actually sits on that as well. And so, you know, he's been a big driving force about looking at partnering and looking at the other ACs and looking at their own backyards to see where the opportunities are with different recreational adaptive sport programs that may exist but don't realize that our buildings are available. And so that's a good thing. And as I mentioned earlier, and I don't know you're, but we're going to be going through a strategic planning process, and that we're hoping in that during that strategic planning process, those assessments, those discussions, those conversations will be there. And that's why I mentioned earlier when I started this process that as we are beginning to make a list of stakeholders who are a part of that, we're going to make sure that every one of you through Kristen's shop gets some opportunity to shine into our strategic plan, be it if we're doing a small focus group, be it if we're doing surveys, electronic surveys that we're collecting, so that you can kind of push that. Because we have to, as I mentioned earlier, figure out where we are now, where we're heading, and how do we get there. And we know that in the how to get there, we can't do it alone. We have to do it with partners. And so I appreciate the fact that you made your comments, and I'll let John know.
All right.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Next, we have Nicole Chandler from the Age Strong Commission.
Okay, I didn't know how this worked. Hello. So as the gentleman in the center stated, my name is Nicole Chandler, and I work for the Age Strong Commission, formerly the Elderly Commission. So we serve residents in the city ages 55 and older. So Sarah is passing around some documents that I'll highlight, and we'll also make sure they get sent digitally, so in case there's any issues of not being able to read anything, or you can't hear me very well, we'll make sure you get them in some capacity. So I'll wait till Sarah hands them out. I gave her a lot of stuff, by the way. Thanks, Sarah. So as I said, our office serves residents ages 55 and older, and so one of the things the commissioner wanted me to talk about is our new name. So as of January, we're the Age Strong Commission, and so we changed our name so that because the people we are serving are changing, so they're living longer, their needs are different, they have different expectations for what they want out of life, but also from city government. And we want to ensure that people are connected with us, that they're engaged with us, and that we continue to be a resource in the city. And so one of the documents that I handed out is kind of a more in detail background about why we changed our name and how it came to be. So thinking about staff participation, so what do we want to represent as city employees, but also what do the residents want to hear and how do they want to feel when it comes to the word aging. So there's a document that talks about that, and if you have more detailed questions, I'm happy to connect you with our communications director, who can give a much lengthier presentation about the name change. So I work on the Age Friendly Boston Plan, which is one of the City of Boston's citywide initiatives. And so it's really looking at how are we designing a city to meet the needs and services of older adults, but thinking also more broadly all ages and also people of all abilities. And so we launched the initiative a few years ago. We have a very lengthy action plan that you can read online. So right now we're in the second year of implementation, and so there are 75 action items that we have to complete within 3 years. Age Friendly is an initiative out of the World Health Organization, so we're one of many cities in the state that are participating, and Massachusetts is the second age-friendly state behind New York, so we're second place for a change. So we've been doing a lot of work in the last 2 years, and so I just want to mention a few items because there are quite a few. So one of the items I had Sarah to pass out is a year one report, so you can see some of the different projects that we've accomplished in the first year. One of the big projects that we are working on right now is the Age Friendly Bench program. And so that kind of came out of resident concerns that they want to be able to walk in their neighborhood, stay active, but sometimes they need a place to sit. And over the last few years, benches have been removed for various reasons, and our goal is to really bring that back to encourage people to be in their neighborhoods and the city, walking and feeling like they can still be engaged. So we worked with the Public Works Department to create a bench that's really meeting the needs of older adults, but is really also beneficial for people of all ages and abilities. And so one of the documents has an image of what the bench looks like on the backside. So it looks like it's metal, but it's not. I think it's actually steel, but it's in a powder-coated material so that it creates the illusion of metal, but in the summertime, you won't burn up if you're sitting on it. If it's cold, you won't get cold sitting on it. It's basically indestructible. You can't really damage it, which is great because that's an issue people have of, oh, how is the city going to maintain it? So we've worked with Public Works to make sure there's a maintenance plan in place, also so that residents can report to 311, hey, somebody put graffiti on it or whatever the case may be. So we're rolling out this program starting in the next couple of weeks. So late May, early June, you'll start to see benches only in the Main Street districts. Our goal is to expand that deeper into the neighborhoods, but the main focus right now is the Main Street districts where people walk, there are bus stops, access to public transportation. So that's one project that we've done. Another thing that we have done is we've created an employment and workforce guide for older adults. As you all know, it's expensive to live in the city of Boston, and depending on your needs, it can be even more expensive. So one of the things we've done is create a workforce guide for older adults, and it features all the programs in the city that people can go to and get resources, whether it's certification, learning how to use a computer, retraining for a potential new career. So that's a document that's online. We're also happy to send you a copy if you would like one as well. So that's in your packet. And, oh, the other thing the commissioner wanted me to talk about, the public bathrooms. So next to benches, public bathrooms is the other top thing that seniors have requested, and making sure they can once again be engaged in the city. So last year we went on a daunting task of creating a public bathrooms map. So it has two different layers to it. So the first one is all City of Boston owned bathrooms. So that's inside City Hall, BCYF, the libraries, fire departments, police departments, and any other City of Boston building. So think like 26 Court Street. So City of Boston owned buildings, and then last fall we added Boston Harbor Walk. So in partnership with Boston Harbor Now, they shared all of the publicly accessible places along the Harbor Walk. So that's everything from bathrooms, boat docks, community rooms, you name it. If it's accessible to the public by Chapter 90 state law, it's on their map. And so we took their data and digged a little bit deeper to make sure that the bathrooms they had were included on our list. So their map didn't have specifics like if it's wheelchair accessible, how many men's versus women's. Our map has more detailed information. So you can look at the map online, or you can call 311 any time of the day or night and say, hey, I'm in Government Center, where's the closest bathroom? They can pull up the database and tell you the closest bathroom. Obviously, not all the bathrooms are accessible. It'll note on the map or when you call whether or not you have to go upstairs, whether there's an elevator to reach it, if there's a wheelchair accessible stall. So we tried to make sure that it met the needs of all users, but understanding that that's not going to be the case for every location that's on our map. So that's one of the big projects that we launched last year. We're also working on the age-friendly business program, which we piloted last year in West Roxbury through West Roxbury Main Streets. And we just piloted the second phase in Hyde Jackson with Hyde Jackson Main Streets and Jamaica Plain. So basically an age-friendly business is one that's welcoming of people of all ages and abilities. It's a very easy process to become certified. There's an application, there's a required customer service training on how to communicate with older adults and people with dementia, because we're also dementia friendly here in the city. And then we come in and go over a checklist that looks at physical environment, looks at the communications of the business, to make sure that they're meeting the needs of all potential consumers who might come into their establishment. And after that, they get a certificate that's signed by the mayor, and they get a decal for their business, and then they go onto our website, which also features a map. We like a lot of maps in our office. And they get some supportive materials as well to help them with like technical assistance. We like to stress that our checklist is not an ADA requirement. We know that there are some businesses that have had issues with ADA. In our experience so far, some of the businesses have want to make changes that are more accessible for folks. So some people want to have a step removed in front of their business because they understand that that's keeping some customers out because of that one step. Others want to add a doorbell or an automatic door button. So we're keeping track of the changes like that so that hopefully as our program continues to grow, we could maybe find some money to support some of those endeavors. Since most of the businesses that we've encountered, at least in Hyde Jackson, are immigrant owned, they're barely making enough to keep the lights on. So we understand that for some people, finances will be an issue, and that's why the checklist is designed so that it's low cost. It's things that businesses are typically already doing, and we tried to make it so it wasn't a burden for someone to have to go out of their way, but if they want to, we encourage it. If we find that there's an issue that would create a major barrier for someone, we ask that they create some kind of alternative plan. So for instance, one business has a bathroom, but it's in a basement, and it's about 6 steps to access that bathroom. So clearly that's not fully accessible to all people. So they have a relationship with the business next door, where if you needed to go, you could go into their business and use their bathroom because there are no steps to enter, and it's not in a basement, so it's on the main level. So we try to help people find alternative ways to make sure that the needs of all types of consumers are met. And so that's just a few of the many things that we are working on. We will have some events starting in July to highlight our work in year 2. So as soon as we have some more detailed information, I'll share that with the commissioner and make sure that you all are welcome to attend as well. And did I miss anything? Any other requests that you all had?
One other initiative that you're working on really quickly is training staff in City Hall and interacting with seniors?
Yes. So the same training that we use for the age-friendly business, we're also using in City Hall. It's a little bit longer, but our goal is to train all City Hall staff who have face-to-face contact with residents in the city. A lot of the information is very much basic customer service one-on-one, and the other part is also educating people about dementia, since there's no physical symptoms of it, and you may encounter someone who is experiencing dementia. So we want to make sure City Hall staff know how to interact, and we feel that the tips that you learn, you can use with other demographics as well, whether it's your coworkers, a younger person, someone who might have a disability, a person who English isn't the first language. We wanted to make sure our tips were universal and could be adapted for any kind of situation. And so far, we're close to training almost 500 people since last year, so we're actively on the go. Yes, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Great, thank you so much, Nicole. I was really impressed by all the work that you've done, particularly as someone who's getting older and needs access to bathrooms. It's great that I know a resource how I can access an accessible city bathroom wherever I am. So I appreciate that. Do we have any questions from the commission? Carl has a question.
So you mentioned all these maps you're creating. So I, as a blind person, just have a concern because maps are often not the easiest thing. Do you have an accessible format or list of these bathrooms and other types of maps you're creating for those who are blind or visually impaired?
Yes, so for the bathrooms website, there's a map, but there's also a list that's sorted by neighborhood. So you can just click the little drop-down box, let's say for Alston, and you would see all locations for Alston. And then on the business map, there's a link that goes to a Google Sheet. So at the moment, those are the 2 ways we have it, but if there are other ways that we could alter, I'm happy to take recommendations back to the technology team as well.
Ducia?
Yes. Hi, here's Ducia speaking. I have 2 questions, and we already addressed them, but I just want to follow up then. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for your presentation today. I live in an apartment complex in Boston, in Mission Hill specifically, and there are many people who are elderly or disabled, and they get those services that you're talking about. So I wonder, is there a way to help? I know from personal experience that there are also a lot of elderly people and disabled who do not live in apartment complexes. They live in other buildings where there are access issues. And I know there are also many elderly who have language issues, like even speak other languages. So is there a way that you can even help them access your services?
Yes, so in our office, we have advocates that are similar to the ONS liaison. So they're specifically for the senior population, and there's one for every neighborhood. So they do information and referral, they sign you up for any public benefits, any of that stuff, and they also do wellness visits. So if someone physically couldn't come to our office, they could come to their house and assist them with the same services that we offer in the house. Also, we are connected to the language access line, so if someone did speak another language, we can phone in the third party to translate on the phone. And many of our staff members speak other languages, so we have Spanish, Haitian Creole, Cape Verde Creole, I want to say there's one other language that's spoken in our office by the staff, but we did request to be connected to the language access line, so that's in our budget to keep that going, because we know that older adults are coming from all backgrounds. We want to make sure we can communicate to the best of our ability. Also, to your point, it's hard to connect with the folks who aren't typically in multifamily housing or already in tune to what's going on in the city. And so that's one of the things we're actively working on. Last year, we did the Door Knocks campaign in Mattapan to reach the folks who are least connected to the city, and it happens to be in Mattapan. So as a department, we literally went out and knocked at over 1,000 doors to give people personal cards about this is what we do, here's how to connect with us, do you have any immediate needs that we can get addressed? And so we did that last year as part of our efforts to really connect to people and bring City Hall to them. So yeah, did that answer all your question? Okay, good.
Elizabeth has a question.
Yeah.
Yes, since the older, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
And since the older demographic encompasses a wider age range, as well as people with varying degrees of comfort and proficiency on technology, computers, smartphones, availability, I was wondering how you both try to facilitate that or work around situations where some people don't have that access?
Yes, so we definitely balance paper stuff and technology a lot because half of our demographic has no access to the internet, whether it's by choice, cost, or whatever the case may be. And then obviously we're serving 3 generations of people, so we definitely have to balance having paper things, but also digitally. Seniority Magazine, which we produce in our office, is one of the best ways to get out information because it goes across the city. You can get it online, but you can also get it in paper, whether it's at a library, a youth center. So that's probably our biggest way of connecting to people who don't have access to that. We also do a lot of in-person things, so we try to go out to events, community meetings, civic association meetings, partnering with churches. Brandon's one of our partners at Mass Senior Action. So we try to go to as many in-person things as possible to make sure that we're not getting folks and telling them, you got to come to City Hall to get connected with us. So we try to do our best to stay out into the neighborhoods as much as possible. But it's hard to balance the digital versus non-digital stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Olivia has a question. Go ahead.
Yes.
Well, it's not a question as much as a statement. Thank you again for distributing Boston Seniority in all of the elder disabled apartment buildings in the city.
Oh, good.
Because I benefit because I got your calendar.
Nice.
Which is their December, January issue. It's next year's calendar, and they put events in it that are relevant to the city. So just an idea for us if we want to steal it.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to the communications team.
Any other questions from members of the advisory board, either in person or on the phone? Kyle? Oh, Juan has a question.
So it's just a comment. Perhaps there is a way that you can measure the metrics through the app of 311, and you can see how many people are using the app or the papers, and then you can probably do some kind of assessment on how you can probably reach out more people and which way is better.
Yeah. I think our communications team has done that once, but I think they're planning to do it again, especially with the new name change. And I will say for the name change, some people love it. Some people still like to call us the Elderly Commission because that's what they most identify with. So it's been interesting to see the different response from people depending on their age bracket. Also, we do a lot of work with the Disability Commission. So we've done work around housing and also transportation, and they're probably one of our biggest supporters in City Hall. So I want to give shout out to your team as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, Nicole?
Yes.
So if I or anyone was walking, in the city to access or to get the information on where an accessible restroom is, you'd recommend calling 311?
I would say yes, only because obviously on a phone it's hard to read. So I would say call 311 because it's 24-hour service and they can pull it up more easily. But I'm glad that he mentioned, it could be an issue for someone with low vision or someone who might be blind. So making sure that if there are ways to improve that, we'll definitely look into that as well.
Sure.
And it's a lot of data points overlap, so it could also be hard if you're looking at the map as well, which is why the drop-down box is a better alternative.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for all your
Thank you.
all your good work, and we look forward to continuing working with you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the chair's report. And there's a lot of stuff going on in and around the city that's pertinent to folks with disabilities, so I just thought I would highlight a few of those. On April 29th, from 1 to 2:30 at the Transportation Building in Boston, there's going to be a listening session of staff from the Mass Executive Office of Health and Human Services. They're the folks that run the PT1 program for medical transportation for folks that need that, and there's been a lot of problems with that service. So they're holding listening sessions throughout the state, and the April 29th meeting that I just mentioned is the one that's going to be held directly in our constituency area. So I would encourage anyone either here or watching online or via the television to go to this session. And again, the staff from directly that run the PT1 program are going to be there to listen to your concerns. So I would encourage everyone to participate. It's not often that we get, the stakeholders in a room like that, so it's important to take advantage. Next, I just wanted to highlight that Boston Center for Independent Living has monthly housing workshops. Their next workshop is on May 1st from 10 to 12. And they're free, and they're held on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. So anyone who needs assistance navigating the housing, either here in the city or in the state, please feel free to attend one of those workshops. Next would be June 1st. There's an adaptive recreation fair put on by the Department of the DCR, and I've gone to that in the past. Probably several folks here have gone to that in the past. You get a chance to try, an adaptive bike, adaptive trail hiking, all sorts of adaptive sports. So please feel free to take advantage of that event, and that's also free, and that's at our Arnasani Park in Brighton.
Time when?
It's June 1st.
Okay.
And I believe it's from 12 to 3, although I'm not positive on the time. I can check, but it's also on the DCR website.
Thank you.
And the next thing that I had was just that the Disability Commission will be sponsoring the emergency preparedness training for people with disabilities on May 21st. At the Piedmont Room. Is that in the Piedmont Room? Is that correct?
It's pronounced Piemonte.
Piemonte Room,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes, and that's from 1 to 2:30? Great. So I would encourage everyone to register for that event if they haven't already. I know I plan on attending as well. And this always makes me smile because this makes me think of the spring and summer. But the mayor's coffee hours are, a PCA of mine mentioned that she saw that the mayor's coffee hours have been announced. And those are great opportunities for folks in all the neighborhoods to get out and speak directly to the mayor and folks from his staff. And, you know, I would encourage anyone who has that opportunity to go, and those start typically at 9:30. They're for an hour, 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And all of those locations and dates are on the city's website as well. So I would encourage, like I said, anybody that could to go. And, you know, one of my PCAs loves going every year. So that's all I had for my report. The next is the commissioner's report.
Thank you, Jerry. I have some other dates to add along with Jerry's. Excuse me, on May 18th, there's going to be an asset summit at Northeastern University. And this is building on the Deaf Tax Days to look at economic stability for people who are deaf. So Jessica's been involved in that. And I don't know if you want to say a few words, Jessica?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So specifically what this is that it's going to be a morning with 2 different workshops specifically for the deaf community. So it'll either be presented by deaf presenters or hearing presenters with interpreters related to budgeting and financial planning. And then there will also be different tabling information related to banks and banking and financial management, as well as staff from the Tax Help Coalition, which runs the tax days, to do financial checkups. So talking through with people what their credit score means, kind of what their kind of saving goals are, things like that. And so that'll be for a couple hours on May 18th at Northeastern. And we can send out the flyer as well.
Great. And just to add to Jerry's announcement about the mayor's coffee hours, they start at the end of April and go through May, and the list is online, like Jerry said. We also have scheduled our community forum, the annual event where the disability community can come out and tell us what we're doing well, what's working in the city, and also what we need to improve on. That's going to be on June 28th. And it's going to be at Suffolk University Law School on Tremont Street. We had it there a few years ago. I don't know if anybody here attended, but it's a nice space. Yeah, it's nice and open, large space. Our ADA Day is going to be on July 23rd on City Hall Plaza. And the Abilities Expo is going to be September 13th through the 15th at the Boston Convention and Exposition Center. Again, the same place it always is. Excuse me. Just a few other brief updates on things we've been working on. Our office hosted an intern from UMass for a day. She was with Jessica, and she is a nursing student, so interested in disability issues. So that is part of an ongoing program that we do in our office. We do internships for adults with disabilities who work with the Mass Rehab Commission. We do summer internships for youth, and we really believe in mentoring persons with disabilities, so that was a great day. The Real Abilities Film Festival wrapped up last week. I had the honor to speak at the concluding night at the Museum of Science, and it's always a great event, so we look forward to being involved with it again next year. We're also planning to work with the city's office called YEE, Youth Engagement and Employment, and what we'd like to do is help more youth with disabilities get jobs or link them up with access to jobs. So similar to what Will talked about, the funding for summer jobs, the city has an open sign-up period, which is currently happening right now. It was extended to April 21st, I believe. So youth between the ages of 15 and 18 can sign up on the website to get a summer job. So we'd really like to make some connections to get youth with disabilities access to these jobs. They have to be Boston residents, again, age 15 to 18, but we're going to work more intensely with YEE next year to see if we can boost the participation by persons with youth with disabilities.
Commissioner, where would they go to sign up or get more information?
Yep, it's on the website at boston.gov.
Oh, okay. Great.
And I can send out the link. And then just a few quick notes, some policy things we're working on. The Uber and Lyft drop-off space was installed a few weeks ago, and we had noticed some barriers along the curb, so we're working with different city departments to try to remove and mitigate some of those barriers. So that's in process. And then I know that the disability community has been concerned about restaurants eliminating straws from the premises. So I did reach out to our environment department to see if the city had a policy or if we were working on a policy. And right now, we don't have any policy and we don't have any plans to make one. But just to keep it on your radar, I know a lot of restaurants seem to be eliminating straws, but usually if you ask for one, I've been able to get them. But I know there's a lot of talk about this. I was out in Cambridge a few weeks ago, and the waitress told me that they had an ordinance. So I just wanted to see if Boston was working on one, but so far we are not. But I know it's definitely an issue. And then soon to be scheduled will be the hearing, the city council hearing on disability issues. We don't have a firm date yet, but as soon as we do, we will share that with the commission. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Next on the agenda is the architectural access update with Patricia and Sarah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Mendez. I'm the Architectural Access Specialist for the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Happy spring. I'm excited to share the flyer today. Jerry mentioned this event. It's a community training on emergency preparedness. You have a flyer in your packet, and it's also in social media. The date is Tuesday, May 21st, from 1 to 2:30 here in Boston City Hall, 5th floor, Piedmont room. As I mentioned last meeting, the position for the Architectural Access Board for the Executive Director has been posted. It's in Mass Careers. It's in the state's website. And the Architectural Access Board meetings will remain in 1 Ashburton Place in the same building that they have been. There was talk of moving, but the latest decision has been to keep the Architectural Access Board meetings in the same place for the foreseeable future. The staff is moving, but the actual meetings will remain in 1 Ashburton Place where they were before. Next, we attended the kickoff utility construction season meeting that happens every year, and we are happy to attend to make some reminders to utility companies to their responsibilities on how to be a good neighbor, and that include communication with us regarding accessible parking spots that need to be relocated, also communicating with the MBTA in case that the bus stops get moved or affected. The other 2 reminders are about keeping the accessible path and providing temporary pedestrian ramps and keeping the access available and safe. And the other reminder is that we always talk about every year is about having appropriate construction barriers, the cane detectable kind of barriers that are safe for persons that rely on a cane. Next, we visited the Volpe Center, which is the United States Transportation Department. We are in conversations with staff from the Volpe Center, and we plan to continue talking and possibly attending some trainings in Cambridge, in Kendall Square, the Volpe Center. The staff was here in City Hall visiting, and the main conversation is safety in transportation and accessibility in train stations MBTA. We have continued to review event planners that are planning their summer events here in City Hall Plaza. There's a few of them. The one I can share from the top of my head is Samsung Technology, and they're going to provide, full accessible exhibits here in the plaza this year. The next thing I want to share is good news about the Rosendale Boston Public Libraries. They're going under reconstruction of the existing public library in Rosendale, and we met with the designers and we had conversations about accessibility, especially about the main entrance. And at the same time, the neighborhood and the community were advocating for a universal entrance. So the design has been updated to provide this wonderful universal entrance. We look forward to this project. The last exciting update is that we have been communicating with LEED representatives. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Leadership is a point program for new construction, new building developments in the city. And our conversations revolve about a new pilot credit that is about social equity, and then there's another new pilot credit about accessibility. And we met with them over the phone, so it's like going to Washington without the airports. And then we're meeting next week to continue our conversations and how we can collaborate in implementing those pilot credits in future building projects here in Boston through the process with the BPDA. That is it for me. Anybody has any questions?
Any questions from members of the commission? Olivia has a question.
Yeah, so the original new plan for the Roslindale Library didn't include a universal entrance?
It had, the main entrance had a combination of ramp and stairs.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, so now it has been updated. So in the sidewalk outside, it's going to be flush. And then when you come into the building, there's going to be a gentle slope into the main reading room.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. I was like, wait, are they having us enter through the back now? Like,
nope.
okay.
It's going to be great.
Excellent.
Any other questions? Elizabeth has a question.
Yes, for when there are requests for variances, is that a process that ever involves the advisory board?
The way the variance applications work is that a project submits the variance to the Architectural Access Board. At the same time, our office gets a copy. So we get to review it. And then we have an opportunity to meet with the proponents when they're asking, sometimes they ask us to support the project. So we meet independently from the Architectural Access Board. We meet at our office and we discuss the variances, and sometimes we support with conditions. So by the time the project in a case goes to the AAB, the board gets to see our letters and our conditions, and usually that way it's helpful for the board to have a letter from us, because we got to know the project and we are the local experts because it's in our city. So that's the way it works.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just so everybody knows, all the AAB variances are open to the public for comment. Is that correct, Patricia? they're open to the public to comment on the AB variance applications?
I'm not sure if they're open to the public, but they're definitely open.
They're public documents.
They are public documents.
Okay.
But before the actual hearing, I'm not sure of the process of the public to access them.
Okay.
The commissions have access to them prior to the meetings.
That's what I was going to say. So our office gets a copy, but also we should sign Jerry up for a copy because the chair of the advisory board should also get a copy.
Oh.
Traditionally, and that used to happen when Carl was the chair, and it's always happened with the former chair people. And I know in other cities and towns, if they don't have a staff person in City Hall, their advisory board or commission members get a copy of it as well. So we can share them with you. We can put your address on the mailing list, Jerry, and then you can feel free to share it with the commission.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Hearing none. Next on the agenda is the update from the newly formed Transportation Subcommittee by Elizabeth.
Thanks, Jerry. So I'm happy to report we've had an opportunity to have 2 conference calls since our last board meeting in March. And although, as we'd expect with people's schedules, it hasn't been possible for the subcommittee members to participate on each of the calls, that by the time we had had both calls, we had had a chance to have everyone participate and to have a meeting summary. Commissioner Makash participated on the call in both times in a listening capacity primarily, and that she has indicated that going forward that when subcommittees such as the transportation one have convened calls, that that is her request, and it's certainly to our benefit as well, that although staff are in a primarily a listening role, but there were a couple of specific issues of expertise about how things are handled in Boston that came up during the call, so it was helpful from that perspective as well. Substantively, the most important discussion point that came up to present to you is that about having our Disability Commission have a vote that would, in opposition to the MBTA fare hike. A number of other organizations and entities related to disabilities have done so. And although it didn't come up at our meeting last month, that is what I would like to put forward to you as something that we could find out how this board wants to handle.
So should we make a, go ahead, Carol.
I make a motion that the commission form a letter and send it to the fiscal board at the MBTA.
Any seconds? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. So, Elizabeth, will you work on drafting the letter, either with me or with Carol?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you.
Great.
So that's a very helpful piece to have going forward.
If I could just make a quick note that the letter be submitted to our office prior to that letter being submitted to a state agency.
Who seconded that motion?
Paul and Josia.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, that's fine, Jessica. In fact, I think that's preferable to make sure that it goes out, not only with the language, but in the approach. So that is how we will handle it. When we have a draft, we'll present it to the commissioner to your office. Thank you. And we'd like to do that expeditiously since the fare hike, since this has already been an ongoing point of concern that we anticipate that this will be going forward with this with quick turnaround. Other than that, additionally, I know that the RTAG Executive Board and public meeting has, both the Executive Board of RTAG has been quite busy, and there has been a general meeting, which I believe took place since our last meeting.
Yeah,
here.
it took place this past.
So Jerry, would you like to give us an update?
Took place last Wednesday. The RTAG group, which I mentioned last time, is the Riders Transportation Access Group. They replaced the old ACT committee, if those of us remember that. We've met a couple of times as a general membership, and each time we've had different presentations. Like we had a presentation on the Better Bus proposals that also presented here to our advisory board, and this last general RTAG meeting we had a presentation on the Green Line extension project. So it's a fairly new advocacy group. We've just had, you know, those couple of general meetings. We're having a few hiccups getting going, but you know, things are moving well. And if you have an interest in participating, please, you know, go to the website and fill out an application, and we'd love to see you at the next general meeting, which will be on May 20th, I believe at 3 o'clock at the Transportation Building. And Carl has a question.
Has the executive membership of the RTAG taken a position on the proposed changes to the shared transportation network by the Massport?
We have not taken an official position or you know, met with the T about that yet. So, but it is on our radar, definitely. So.
Any further RTAG update?
That's it for now.
Okay, thank you. Actually, it just goes to show you with different meetings, particularly in the evening. I attended that meeting last week. I just had forgotten when in the scheme that had occurred. One of the other presentations was by Ben Schutzman, who oversees the RIDE program. And although for that night the topic was confined to a specific issue regarding account refunds on the RIDE, I did have an opportunity to briefly discuss with Ben on his way out the concerns that people have had about the Uber, Lyft, the TNCs, as well as to praise the fact that there is a much greater presence on the road of the wheelchair accessible vehicles. And Jerry and I have discussed just at a very preliminary level our interest in having a public hearing at some time going forward that we would certainly well advertise, because this continues to be an ongoing issue for people who are already members of the RIDE program, who want to participate in the Uber and Lyft pilot program, both who are in wheelchairs, who need the wheelchair accessible vehicles, and some people who don't, but who have unnecessarily limited restrictions, only being allowed 2 subsidized rides a month on Uber or Lyft, which is one round trip, which then becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy if these are people who really have had a lot of difficulty with the conventional ride program, but who would like an on-demand service, that they're really very restricted currently in their ability to use that program. And to, just as a case in point, that we are wanting to both have a public hearing, but that we're still trying to get everyone into the same room of the MBTA Ride Pilot leadership, Uber and Lyft representatives, and those in the community who are interested. Because just yesterday I took an on-demand Uber Wave vehicle ride, and the driver told me I was his first wheelchair client in the last 10 days. He does about 15 to 19 trips a day. When he has wheelchair vehicles, it's about 3 or 4, which is about what I hear from other drivers who also do this. But it just shows you there's a disconnect there, because I can assure you that there is much greater interest, that when those vehicles show up at places like Spalding, where there are large numbers of people who use wheelchairs, the interest that there is such a thing as Uber and Lyft still is not commonly known, or that people can sign up for both. And so to me, that just really drove home that point, that this driver is paid a 40-hour, 10-hour shifts, a 40-hour week, and in 10 days hadn't had one wheelchair ride on any shift, on any of the days. So while Uber is able to say we have X% increased driver presence on the road, there are still obstacles, so we look forward to improving that. And with that, I think that's where we are as a subcommittee for now. And now we know we'll go forward with the letter, and I'll be in touch with the subcommittee about a call between now and our next monthly meeting.
Great.
Thanks. Oh, any questions? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And next, I don't believe there was any old business. Remind me if there was. And then the next thing we had was an old action item in regards to the actual Architectural Access Board letter.
That it's going to be submitted.
Great. Thank you. Any new business that anyone would like to bring up? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Well, one of the things that was helpful to learn tonight that I was already thinking, I was wondering if other board members have any suggestions about additional ways to access information about what's going on, both in our neighborhoods that we were hearing today about the seniority paper, and I believe there was something else that was mentioned, but as the other board members know, I have been a proud Boston resident since December of 17, so I personally would welcome knowing if there's additional ways people have found out about hearing about information. I know some places might be, some information might be neighborhood specific, but do any of you have any additional suggestions or recommendations? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Olivia.
One of the things I do is just watch the news, in addition to frequenting the small businesses in my area. A lot of times those business owners have their finger on the pulse of the community. And it's also, I mean, quite frankly, if I can get into a small business, I'll do it as opposed to going to a big box.
Mm-hmm.
I find this is Jerry speaking. I find the Disability Commission's weekly email, like newsletter that they send out to be particularly helpful as well as, you know, I read occasionally my local, my local West Roxbury Bulletin or whatnot, but I also, watch the news quite regularly as well.
Yeah, I know there's an app called Nextdoor that's become pretty convenient. I'm not sure what part of it would cover disabilities, but I'm sure if you contacted them that they would be more than happy to oblige. It's a former local Boston resident. She's one of the founders. It's becoming more popular in the areas, no matter what town or region in the state and throughout the country.
Paul, could you just explain what it does?
It's an app that covers anything from home services to crime in direct neighborhoods throughout the country. Whatever you possibly could need on it, they have pertaining to citizens in certain neighborhoods. It's called Nextdoor. As far as with disabilities, I'm not sure they're really implementing it strongly because it just started. It's becoming more popular, but I'm sure that if you reached out, they would have more, make it more accessible.
And do you know if it's available for both Android and iPhone, or is it just on one?
I don't.
No.
I'm just new to it myself. I get certain things in the mail about it, certain things pop up on my phone. So I'm sure that the way they're congenial to everybody, I'm sure that they would, it would be accessible within time. It's called Nextdoor.
Great. Well, thanks for letting us know about that resource. And Carl has a comment?
So Nextdoor is an answer to Facebook where the whole world sees it. It's a social media platform, but the only people that can be your friends or whatever are people that live in your neighborhood. So it's very specific to your neighborhood.
Thank you. And Wesley?
I was going to say the same thing that Jerry had mentioned. I typically read through that weekly newsletter, and also I have a subscription to My Area, which is the North End Community Newsletter. They send an email almost every day, Monday through Friday, and I think that next week there's actually going to be a forum talking about the new community center for the future in that area in the North End. So my wife and I may go to that meeting, and we can find out more information about what the plan is for the new community center.
That would be great if you could bring that back. Thanks, Wes.
Just one thing to add too, Elizabeth, do you get the Disability Policy Consortium newsletter?
Yes, some of what several people have mentioned about the various newsletters or local news is very helpful to hear. But there a couple of Nextdoor I wasn't familiar with, and I in my own neighborhood, certainly when I'm going about my day or going into businesses, if there are things that are noteworthy to mention, I've done so. Some things have need to be taken up at a higher level. I realize as far as automatic door buttons and that kind of thing, and I've been in contact with Patricia about those. And lastly, as we all have done, this one actually wasn't in my own neighborhood, but I was in one of our Boston hospitals recently and saw a soap dispenser, a hand sanitizing soap dispenser right near a food eatery, but also that was the staircase was immediately to the left of it within inches. And so and it was the only one in that location. So certainly placement like that, the need to continue to educate and have things moved, or things like door buttons that are at inappropriate heights, even when they exist. So I think our roles as ambassadors continues to be important, but thanks for hearing for what else is going on. And are there any neighborhoods when things are at the more granular level or micro within the city, are there some neighborhoods that aren't represented on the board that we could have additional ways of finding out?
Yeah, the city has an Office of Neighborhood Services called ONS, and each neighborhood has a liaison. So the liaison is really the one who has their pulse on the neighborhood and knows, intricate details about the neighborhood, about the residents, about meetings and things like that. So we do work closely with them, but our goal for this year is to get more plugged in. So we'll work more closely with them. And then we do, when we advertise for board positions, we do seek to have diversity of neighborhoods. And I know we have a lot of neighborhoods represented, but I believe there are 22 neighborhoods in Boston.
Oh, yeah, and it
So
would
we wouldn't be able
exceed,
to have
yeah.
everybody, but we certainly do look for that.
Sure.
Right, and I think this is Jerry, I think we have done a good job of diversifying over the last year or so, but there's always more work to be done. So thanks, everybody, for sharing those resources. So under new action items, we'll, for next month or even prior, we'll look forward to seeing that drafted letter, and of course, with the commissioner and her staff, we'll get final approval on that, so. Does any member of the public have any questions or additional comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Oh, yes. I make a motion to adjourn.
The meeting is adjourned. See you all May 29th.